Hi everyone, this is Heather from weddingsbyheather.com, where my goal is to equip you with the best techniques and tips to make you a better and more efficient photographer. In this Q&A video, we're going to take a look at lens correction inside of Lightroom. But first, make sure you check out my free workflow video series available on my website. I recently shared this photo for my Tech Tuesday series, and I wanted to offer a more detailed explanation of the lens correction tool. I'm going to go ahead and take this into the develop module by pressing D on my keyboard. And almost every lens changes the way your image looks by warping it in some way. Each lens can create barrel distortion, vignetting at big apertures, chromatic aberration, and more. And this will express itself differently on a full frame camera versus a crop sensor camera. But first, let me show you what it looked like before. This is right out of the camera, and I left those settings on so that you could see them. And then I just did some quick color adjustments and skin correction inside of Lightroom. I go over that in detail in my Lightroom workshop available via the premium videos on my website. But for today, we're just going to look at the lens correction panel. So what I'm going to do is enable the profile corrections to see what happens to this photo. So you'll notice instantly that the vignetting went away, but if you pay close attention to her face, it warped it a little bit differently. Well, let me rephrase. What happened was I was shooting with the 50mm lens on a full frame camera, and her face was warped, and this corrected it. Let's go ahead and look at another similar photo. So this photo was right out of the camera. Here it is with minor adjustments and skin correction. When I come over to lens correction, if I select that box, I'll notice that it takes away the warping and gets rid of the vignette created from the lens. Now, I should say this. Profile corrections are not typically going to work on JPEG images because Lightroom can't find or read the data from the camera and the lens. Now, the reason I can't make this as an absolute statement is because there are times when it will work, and there are a few cumbersome workarounds. But the bottom line is if you enjoy these corrections, then it's probably best if you shoot raw images. Let's go ahead and try this image and enable. Now see, I don't like what it does to this one because it kind of pushed them towards the camera, or so it looks, right? It changed the warping, and I don't like that type of warping. That's bad warping. Let's take a look at this image. Same thing. So I'm going to leave that unchecked for an image like this. And for this image, and by the way, I shared this image recently and people studied it apparently and said, hey, where's her arm? I see that her hand is holding her skirt, but I don't see her arm. Well, her arm is there. I assure you, I did not remove it or do any Photoshop tricks to it. It's just behind her hair. She has thin arms and a lot of hair. So her arm was behind it, but it is there. Okay, let's click Enable Profile Corrections. Again, it warps it in a way that I am not enjoying, so I'm going to leave it unchecked. And let's take a look at this final photo. I'm going to enable this, and it fixed the warping and it removed the vignette, which is what I would expect, but I actually liked it with the natural vignette. So I'm going to go ahead and leave that off. But I will say this. If you decide that predominantly you want to have Enable Profile Corrections selected, that is by default, you can adjust that inside of Lightroom. If I haven't done anything else to this photo and I click this, what I can do is go to Develop, Set Default Settings, and what it's asking me essentially is, are you sure you want to do this? So again, if I had not made any other changes to this photo except for Enable Profile Corrections, I could update to current settings, and then every time I come into the Develop module with this Nikon D700 camera in use, that will be checked. That is a personal preference. You'll just have to decide predominantly whether you want that turned on or off. I will say this. Many times I leave it off. So there's only actually a few times where I enable it. So I'm not going to change that by default. I go over this in a little more detail in my online Lightroom workshops. I just wanted to give you a quick overview so you could play with it a little bit. And if you don't shoot raw, but you still want to accomplish the same thing, you can come into the manual portion of this panel and you could change the distortion here. Just make sure you have constrain crop checked so that you don't see those white edges. But obviously it's doing the same kind of thing just here using the distortion in the transform. And I encourage you to play with these other items just to see what they do. I hope that you found this useful. I'll see you in the next video.